You're on.
Welcome aboard, all you ground troops spinning around smartly on the planet. We're back. We've been here since 2012. We've been doing videos since 2004. And we're very choosy with our group of people that we present to you in our metaphysical, esoteric, ascension, cosmos reality. But Hans Dietrich is a researcher and explorer, and I've known about him for many, many years. And he's also an author of at least 3 books. And we're asking him to come on and tell us who's who in his interview life, as we all are the author of our own life story, as all of you know, as authors that come on and share your lives with us. But Hans and I met at the Alien event, which gives him sort of a interesting way of us fitting together with certain people that most of you know already. But I'm going to let Hans talk a few minutes about himself and then a little about the alien event. And then we're going to get into his entire life history. And he's been a very interesting world traveler. We're going to talk about his travels as well. So Hans, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Everybody's busy these days. It's hard to catch anybody, but we're all here still trying. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you want to be known for, and then we'll go into the early days of how you got to today, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me on. My name's Hans Dietrich. For your audience. I'm an award-winning graphic designer. I also study esoteric knowledge, civilization.
Okay.
We
Is
met
that it?
we met
That's a lot.
in LA in March, April.
We met October of 2024.
Vegas.
Yeah, Las Vegas for the first time. And you had spoken at something else over there in Oregon, or the big, another conference. So you have several on your profile, right, that you have spoken at?
I've spoken at Berlin event, Biomedical 2023, also April 2020. And then over you. Then in February of this year, I had Conscious Life X. And also again, I just got back from speaking. So.
I'm wondering if I'm coming through okay, or if you're coming through okay. Can you hear me without it separating, or there's no sound problems?
I can hear you fine. There's a bit of delay on my.
Okay. Well, let's go into your life, because you've really made a historical mark. Everybody that I've talked to in the past, they'll say the Dropa Stones. So I know you've got 3 books out right now that we can talk about, and what you've been on other talk shows, and you've been showing up and helping others understand esoterics. And how did you, let's go back and look at your history And you said you were you born in another country or were you born in America?
I was
Where
born
were
in
you
the States.
born?
I was born in the States outside of Seattle. Before I moved to Nepal.
Okay. When
I lived in
when I'm
Kathmandu from the age of 4 until I was 19. And then I went back in 1998 for my third year of college. I went back to do an internship at a large format print company while waiting for a special access permit to Bhutan, where I was doing my thesis. And so my father was working in Bhutan at the time. Bhutan is notoriously difficult to get into, especially in the 1990s and early 2000s. They have to invite you into the country after you apply for your visa. They usually give you about 10 days maximum, and it costs $200 to $600 a day, depending on what season you're there, for your visa. And that doesn't include transportation, it doesn't include hotels or food or gifts that you buy. That's just your visa. And you're allowed to go from Paro to Thimphu, and Thimphu to Boomtong, which is about halfway through the country, and that's all you're really allowed to see. And so they give you 10 days. But my father was working there in far eastern Tashigong, or Trashigong. He worked at the Institute of Forestry, and so he was able to secure me a 2-month special access visa so I could go study the ancient art and architecture of the Buddhist Lakongs and Dzongs, which are the monasteries that are in Bhutan. I've been in some of these monasteries that most Westerners will never see. They house some of the oldest Buddhist artwork in the world, basically stemming back about 800 years. And it was really an amazing experience. But while I was there, I ran into these little nomadic people that wander in from far eastern Bhutan in through Bhutan as on their nomadic trail. And I asked my teacher, I had hired a teacher and a translator named Tashila. I asked him who these people were. And he told me they were called the Drokpa. They're not from Bhutan. They're from far eastern Tibet, or Kham Tibet, which is now central China. And they're very, how do I put it? They're a very odd group of people because they're smaller, very short in stature. They're about 4'5" to 5 foot tall at most. They have an orangish complexion to them, which is a little bit different than Nepalese or Tibetan complexion. And they have blue eyes, which is incredibly rare for this region. And so I was very fascinated with them. They don't speak Tibetan, which is spoken in Bhutan. They don't speak Nepalese, which is also spoken in Bhutan. Instead, they speak another dialogue or dialect called Shina. And Shina is spoken today by about 2,000 people at most. And it's mostly these nomadic people. And there's 3 areas of Shina. There's Shina Brokskat, Brokat, and Minoriskat. And these are spoken across the regions from far eastern Kham Tibet all the way into the Black Sea area where they wander to and from. And so their name also transliterates over the region. In far eastern Kham Tibet, they were known as the Dropa. In the middle of Tibet, they're known as the Zopa. And in Bhutan, Nepal, northern India, they're known as the Drokpa. And then the further east, or west that you're going, they become known as the Brokpa. And they're nomadic farmers. They usually have their goats, and they take them over the high altitude passes. They wear usually an inverted leather apron or leather of sorts that either comes from yak or from the goats. And they also wear these felted wool spider caps that have these like 4 or 5 tentacles that stick off of them. And this helps them wick away water from their face in the high altitude passes, the fog, and even in the heavy torrential rain of the monsoon. And Shina is an interesting language. Like I said, it's not spoken in Nepal or in Bhutan, but it's a gendered language similar to Thai or Spanish. So it has a female and a male speaking language that are slightly different. And it also has 3 different caste scenarios with the language. So there's the common tongue or child's tongue, there's a common tongue, and then there's an upper caste or royal tongue to it. And they were very instrumental in helping establish the kingdom of Bhutan. They translated Sanskrit into Tibetan for the Bhutanese as well as the local region, and into Hindi. Shina, the language itself, predates Sanskrit by about 2,000 years, so it's one of the oldest spoken languages in the region. And like I said, they're quite an oddity, and they're found in a lot of the different art in the monasteries. There's a particular piece that was the procession for the first king of Bhutan, or first, they called him Druk Gyalpo, Dragon King of Bhutan. His name was Urgyen Wanchu. And in this procession, the last person in the procession is this Dropa. He's super small. He's carrying a singing bowl, and in the singing bowl, he has the Sintamani stone as a gift. And so this really piqued my interest. I was really interested in learning more about this. And this is kind of where a lot of my studies into esoteric began, even though after I returned from my thesis, I went back to college, graduated, and then I got pretty much involved in graphic design ever since, until around 2018, where another researcher decided to challenge me to learn as much as I could about the Dropa and the Dropa Stones. And I didn't put one and two together originally, but when I started researching into this, I'm like, God, these people sound an awful lot like this nomadic group of people that I met in Bhutan called the Drokpa. And so the more I started researching into this, I realized there wasn't a lot of a story around the Dropa Stones. It's the same story that's told on everybody's blogs, everybody's podcasts, and even in Wikipedia. And I decided to dive even deeper into it and discover the origins of the story, what was legit about him, what wasn't. There's a lot of people out there that think the story is incredibly, hokey and they're very skeptical about it, as I was. But the more I researched into this topic, I started realizing this huge overlap with my own research and thesis research, as well as the fact that a lot of the research that had been done around the Dropa Stones and Dropa people could not have been known unless whoever was doing the research had immersed themselves in Tibetan and especially in Bhutanese culture. And when these stories are coming out in the 1930s to 1960s, Bhutan and Tibet were almost completely inaccessible. And so how would the researchers have known what they know about these people unless they had been in that region? And so that had always been fascinating to me. And so I decided that would be what I would start lecturing about. I ended up writing a book about it called Dropa Legends and Lore, connecting the mysteries of Bhutan, China, Nepal, Tibet, and basically telling a little bit about my story growing up in Nepal, but then diving pretty deep into the research around the Dropa Stones and Dropa nomadic people. So
I had to unmute myself because
not a worry.
We were having a little issue getting set up technically in the beginning. Well, Hans, this really fascinates me because I'm very much into believing that we come from the stars or space, if you will, or we're just visiting this planet, was the way it was told to me in Houston. And I've died several times and come back, and I'm doing my best to understand consciousness and life after life, and a lot of this extraterrestrial energy seems to be in the universe. Some can pick it up better than others. Do you think these beings had any type of historical reality, or was it there? You talked about them writing on the Dropa Stones to me a little bit yesterday. Yeah. Do you think that they were the ones that had seen beings come and go, and other than Earth or not of Earth origin type of beings?
Well, this is interesting, and this kind of goes into my research as well. So while I was in Bhutan, I was introduced to a very rare sect. It's called Nyingma. And this is where we get all the stories of astral projection, levitating monks levitating rocks up mountains, the connections to Sirius through Mount Meru, which is both a physical mountain in far western Tibet on the border of Ladakh, but in spiritual practice, it's also considered a dimensional portal. And so it stems from the root chakra in the earth all the way through the different chakras, all the way to the crown chakra, which is the summit. And in Buddhist culture, it is said to connect to Sirius, the star system, by a rainbow bridge. And this is fascinating because when you're up in the Himalayas and up on the Tibet Plateau, there's no light pollution from cities up there. So you can see the Milky Way incredibly bright above you. And so this rainbow bridge, I think, could also lend itself as a metaphor for the Milky Way, because literally you have the mountains and the Milky Way will come down to the east where Sirius rises, usually during the summer months. Actually, it just started rising. This is what Lionsgate is all about, is when Sirius rises above the horizon during the summer months. And fascinatingly, it connects itself to other religious aspects like Islam, because this is when they go on their Hajj to Mecca and they worship, or they want to go up and touch what they call basically the Kaaba stone. And the Kaaba stone is considered basically a chunk of meteorite that came from Sirius. Well, this is interesting because this is the same story around the Sintamani stone. And so in Buddhist folklore, or Buddhist, teachings, around 20,000 BC, a monk finds a box with 4 items in it at the summit of Mount Meru. And he brings it back down the mountain, and he believes that the items had come from Sirius. One of the items is the Sintamani stone, which is considered the luck stone, the dream stone, or the wish stone. It grants its possessor longevity of life and prosperity, which is really interesting. The second item in the box is known as the Vajra Dorje, which is a 4-sided lightning bolt. And it represents the 4 winds, the 4 seasons, the 4 cardinal directions, and was one of the foundational stones or pillars for Vajrayana Buddhism. The third item in the box is known as Buddha's singing bowl. And so these singing bowls, if you strum them up, they create a vibration and a harmony. And so if a monk is going into meditation, he will go into a deeper state of transcendental meditation, which allows him then to astral project, or her for that matter. And then the fourth item in the box is known as the Mani stone, and it has the writings Om Mani Padme Hum around it. And it's interesting because the way the Mani stone is described is very similar to how the Dropa stone is described. And the Dropa are interesting because, as I mentioned, they allegedly crash landed their ship from Sirius in far eastern Kham Tibet. And over the course of time, they had to interbreed and intermix with the local Tibetans in order to survive. And so here we have a genetic cousin of ourselves living out there in the cosmos. And a lot of our space programs, especially, looking for Goldilocks planets, is trying to find another place, in our cosmos that could be inhabitable by us. But in reality, they're also looking for, the right area of space that basically we can live in, which perhaps other beings are already living in, which would be considered our genetic cousins. And so the Dropa or Drokpa nomadic people of today could very well be, the offshoot of this race that came from Sirius. The story definitely indicates this. But a lot of people get the story wrong because they say that the Dropa stones tell the story of this extraterrestrial race coming about 10,000 BC, crash landing on Earth, intermingling with the local tribes. But if you actually read the translation that came off the disc, the translation is from the local tribes describing the event. And so the Dropa stones, I think, are very much related to what we call B or bi discs. They're found all over China. They don't really know what they were for. Most of them have no writing on them at all. They're made out of it's a granite, basically, that's called jadeite. And so it's granite that has pieces of jade infused within it, but also cobalt and mercury, where most bi discs, like the one I have, is just made out of jade. And so this is super old. I was going to have somebody at one of the conventions help me try and translate it, but all of the glyphic writing on this is Proto-Chinese writing. And so it comes before the current Chinese linguistic writing that exists in China today. And so this came from burial. Part of the translation on it is for good luck, but I don't know what the entire translation is, because trying to find somebody that can read these old languages is very difficult. I might actually scan it and put it through an AI filter and try and see if AI can actually decipher what's written on it. But it is interesting that this story keeps circulating around and around, and I keep learning more and more about it the deeper I dive into it.
How many years have you been involved with esoterics and what we're doing here with cyberspace culture online? Because you said you've been involved like alien event maybe 4 years now, and but that's hard to walk into the alien event and be involved. I've known Saeed Farman, the founder of Biomed, 5D, and Alien Event since 2004, right from the Pythagoras conference that was happening with quite a few people while I lived there in Kentucky. So he called me one day. I guess he found me on Facebook. And so we've been friends ever since, helping promote. But how did you, because this Dropa Stones leads to extraterrestrial involvement, and like you said, Sirius, which Sirius B, I guess, and so many people believe their self or one of their lineage somewhere in their family is a starborn or a star being involved, Sirius. And then there was a tribe on Earth that believed that as well, and I've heard that.
Dogon.
Who was that?
They're called the Dogon.
The Dogons. Yeah. Now, do you...
Their ceremony, dance, they map out the rotation of Sirius A and B around each other, and it's the way that they do their dance is almost identical to what we have discovered in modern times using telescopes, with the pattern of Sirius A and Sirius B rotating around themselves while going.
Would you consider yourself a quantum theorist or just a historical researcher, or how do you compare yourself?
More of a historical and esoteric researcher. I enjoy stations. I research symbology, magic of symbols throughout time, because there's a lot of symbology related to Saturn and Sirius from ancient times that's still being used today. So this kind of overlaps into some of my thesis research as well. And then I got heavily involved in going to Egypt. I've been there twice. Really enjoyed going both times, but I started learning more about the Cometian culture. And so the Cometians were the Egyptians that were basically in Egypt before the Greeks conquered Egypt. Egypt is a Greek name. 95 to 99% of what we know about Egypt today comes entirely from the Greeks. And I feel strongly that the Greeks not only hijacked but corrupted a lot of the Cometian culture and history that was there prior. And so I wrote my second book about the magic of symbols and symbology. Where is that? It's right here in front of me. So this is The Magic of Symbols, which is my second book. Obviously, you can see there's quite a heavy influence of Saturnian symbology on there. And then my third book is about Kemet, the lost mysteries of Kemet, the land before the Greeks. And so I'm trying to tell the story from what I learned of Cometian cosmology and Cometian history before the Greeks basically corrupted it. Any of the names coming out of Egypt that end in Is, like Isis or Osiris, these are all Greek names. And the Greeks didn't understand. They thought they were gods and goddesses, but they were all titles and aspects of nature. And so this is where the Greeks got a lot of things wrong. The largest thing I think that they got wrong was calling the kings pharaohs, because the word pharaoh actually is a woman's title. And it comes from Per-Ah, which is the high house of the woman. And so in the ancient times, the high priestesses would choose their consort to be king. And you always see pictures of her with her arm around her man as if to say, I chose this. And so she and he would have been the pharaoh unity. It was a matriarchy. She ruled over the the fertility of the land and the fertility of the people, and her king, her consort, ruled over the physicality of the land and the physicality of the people. And together they ruled together. And the Greeks came in and they saw it as patrilineage only. These all must be kings. They started calling everybody pharaoh. Good scholars know the difference, and they say in the time of Pharaoh there was King Tutmosis, or there was King Ramses. Again, these are all Greek names, but Ramses would have been known as Ramasu. That was his name, which means the rebirth of the sun. And so lazy scholars will say, oh, Pharaoh did this and Pharaoh did that. And it bothers me, because if they chose to just scratch enough under the surface, the real research is right there in front of them, explaining that this was a matriarchy, explaining that the word Pharaoh actually is a female title. And so it frustrates me, because so many people are very lazy, in their research, and they continually call people Pharaoh. But it is interesting, because one of these aspects of nature, Osiris or Wisir, is also known to be a being of Sirius. And so we have this huge overlap between multiple cultures, ancient Cometian cultures. If you look at even the Masonic traditions, the blazing star is the blazing star of Sirius. You look at Hindu and Muslim traditions, you also have this connection to Sirius, all the way into Buddhist traditions. And so what is our overall connection with Sirius? Well, it is the brightest star, or stars, now that we know that there's 2 and possibly 3 that rise on the horizon during the summer months. This is, as I said, this is what kicks off Lionsgate, because we get all this amazing bright energy from Sirius as it rises on the 8th of August. And we're still very fascinated with Sirius as a planet. And so many people talk about beings coming from Sirius. If you look at Oumuamua, which came through our solar system, 2017? It was barreling end over end over end. It passes by Earth on the way to the sun. It slows down, and then it changes its trajectory to slingshot around the sun, speed up, and head toward Vega. Or actually, it came from Vega, and it was heading towards Sirius. And so there's a good question that, whatever Oumuamua was could also be a craft from Sirius. And if you read into the research of the Dropa, they came here in these long, cylindrical-shaped sleeper ships that would take them a couple thousand years across, the cosmos because they're not using fast FTL or faster than light speed. And so these sleeper ships would be known as generational ships. Well, if you have something that's spinning end over end over end, you're creating an artificial gravity inside of it if it's hollowed out. And so there's a good possibility that Oumuamua could be related to the Dropa, who allegedly crash land here, I want to say, twice, because if you read the account on the disc, whoever is describing what happened, they say the Dropa came down from the clouds in their winged gliders 10 times before the sun set. The villagers all hid in the caves until they realized this time that the Dropa came with peaceful intentions. And so this time is an interesting translation, because it suggests that they've come before. Well, if you do the research, they initially came here 10,500 years ago, around the same time as the Halcyon Comet event, and possibly when we were struck, basically, and it melted the ice caps, right around the same time. And then they got into a fight, basically, in the research. They got into a fight with the primitive humans that were here, and the young warriors ended up having their way with the beautiful young, human women. They take some of the humans along with animals, minerals, water, dirt, so on and so forth, back to Sirius with them for further study. And this is where the scientists of Sirius start realizing that the Dropa and humans are genetic cousins. And if they were interbreeding with them, as the conquest of war, maybe there is a hybrid civilization of their people living on Earth. And so they then build a faster and smaller generational sleeper ship, and they come back here around 1040 AD. And so that's when they crash land. And once they crash land, they send out a bunch of parties to go, find food, water, and shelter, basically. And some of these parties, these exploration parties, didn't return. And so there was a burial in a cave in this very remote region of far eastern Tibet called Bayan Kara Ula and Bayan Harshan mountain ranges. They're riddled with caves, but they buried their dead in these caves. And so over time, the bodies, because of the rarefied air and altitude, mummified, where some of them did not. And so this is what, in 1938, a researcher from the Beijing Academy of Science, his name would be Chi Te, but this is not his name. If you actually look into the research, it's Shifu Te. Shifu is a title, not a name, and it means teacher. And Te is a transliteration of Techu. So he would have been known as master or teacher Techu from Beijing Academy of Sciences. But the researchers looking into the Dropa Stones basically call him Chipute, and they're like, oh, we can't find anybody named this. And it's like, because that's not his name. It's a transliteration of Shifu Te. And so he stumbles with his archaeological team across this cave, where literally the inside of the cave has been hewn out of the bedrock, very similar to what you find in Peru and even in India. And in the cave, they find row upon row of human remains, mummified, and some of them are skeletal. They're said to have slightly elongated heads. They're about 4 feet tall, which is how we describe the Dropa or Zopa people of the region. And they have orangish complexion and blue eyes, which again is incredibly rare, but this is how the Dropa have been described. And amongst them, they find one disc, like the one I have here. It's about the same size and description. And spiraling out from the center to the outer edge is this hieroglyphic writing that researchers claim is an alien writing. Well, you can't translate an alien writing without having a cipher. And so I believe that the writing came from the local tribes that were in the region and possibly could have been written in Shina, which would have looked alien to a Chinese scholar because it's not their language or their script. But over time, because it is a regional language, it could be translated.
Wow, that's a lot of information, but I see how you get...
You're on mute. You muted yourself.
Thank you. I was saying I could see how you would be invited to speak on this and show this Dropa Stone sample in your books, and I can't wait to get your books on this. Now, do you have to send them to me, or can I order them on Amazon or Barnes and Noble?
I haven't put an ISBN on them yet. I'm going to do that in my next run. But you can buy them directly off my website or through lulu.com. It will take you directly to lulu.com.
Oh, Lulu. Yeah, that's what I use.
I self-publish. They're only about 180, 200 pages long. They're introductory materials. I'm trying to make them interesting enough, not super thick novels, but interesting enough so people can also go out and do their own.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. I don't see. I was going to show you a very thick one that Brett Luter just wrote recently. Yeah, and I was like, Brett, that's like a encyclopedia. He's like, but I want you to read it from the beginning. I said, well, I've marked chapters. I had it out. I don't know what I did with it. Anyway, back in the day, he discovered all this. Took him about 20 years to get to Portal of Ascension, PR for the world and all of that. I don't know if he covered any chapters from you on the Dropa because I haven't read the book yet, but I did purchase it for $36 with shipping. So is yours about less than that, or from your house, or is it cheaper on Lulu to get it?
My link goes to the so I sell them for about $5.
Let me.
What's that?
I was asking you, how much are they going off of Lulu, or you sell them?
I think they're $25 on Lulu. Yeah. Plus shipping.
Is it the exact same books you showed us
Yes, correct. Yes, correct.
The 3 books?
Yeah. So
okay,
Dropa,
folks.
Dropa,
Dropa?
Legends
What's it called?
Legends and Lore.
Dropa, Legends and Lore? Is it?
Yep.
Or,
Yep.
okay.
And the symbols. The second book.
Yeah, that'll be nice. The Magic of Symbols.
And the third book is called The Lost Mysteries.
And what is Kemet? Can you explain that?
So Kemet, or Kemt, was the name of the part of North Africa that was initially Egypt. And it stemmed literally from Mali, Africa, all the way to Ethiopia and all the way up into basically Syria, in a sense. And so that whole region was ancient Egypt. And when the Greeks came, they thought it was a much smaller land, which, Egypt is today. It's much smaller, but it used to be Libya and, Morocco and Algeria. All of that used to be part of ancient Kemet. And so Kemet in the hieroglyphs translates to the land underneath the sky of Nut that is black and fertile, basically. And so it's the black fertile land is what Kemet translates to. And this is because every year the Nile floods and it spreads its alluvial soil around the Nile Delta area, and this is where everything becomes incredibly fertile and they can grow their crops. And so that was what the land was known as. When the Greeks arrived, they were taken to Min Nefer, the harmony of fertility, which they called Memphis, another Greek name, but it was Min Nefer. Memphis is now present-day Cairo, or part of present-day Cairo. And they were taken to a temple, and outside of the temple was a stele. And on it, it said Het Ka Ptah, which means the physical manifestation of the creator Ptah, which is what they called the creator god. Well, the Greeks, they heard Hepkaptos, which then became Egyptos, which then became Egypt. And they thought it was representing the entirety of the land. But Hepkaptos also means the physical manifestation of the creator. And this is where we get the word Coptic from, like in the Coptic Christians. And it's interesting because the Coptics existed 1,000 years before this character named Yeshua, who we all know today as Jesus, and they were known as Christians. Well, Christos to the Greeks means the anointed one, or the anointed ones, Christos. And so this is where Christ, or Christian, comes from. And so, again, it was a title. It was nobody's name. Yeshua also means the physical manifestation of the creator. So here we have this name being borrowed across multiple cultures. And unfortunately, the Greeks, again, they're responsible for biblical translations, and a lot of the stories, I believe, in the Bible came from much, much older cultures. But I'm not a biblical scholar. I just research it.
Biblical scholars. That makes me think of a gentleman I had on my TJMRCT radio years and years ago when he was just first getting started. He wasn't even with Gaia yet. His name was Billy Carson from Florida. You know Billy, and heard all the scuttlebutt of being a scholar. How do you compare your work to Billy? I saw he's going to speak again somewhere recently. It crossed my cell phone. But how do you compare biblical scholars with Gaia and Billy Carson? Or have you spoken on Gaia? I don't know if you have.
I would love to. I don't really know how to go. Retains a lot of knowledge, but he is one of these people that calls Isis and Osiris and Pharaoh, and without stumbling deeper into the research, which also talks a lot about Mahabharata, how they were using his word. The Brahmanda, there are no Brahma. They were the Brahmastra that were being used in the Mahabharata. And so it makes me laugh when I hear him say that, Brahmahanda. It's like there's no word called Brahmahanda, but he continually says this, and so I can't really compare myself to him because I do different research, but he also researches into Kemet, and he researches into ancient sites and civilizations, similar to what I do, and so there's a similarity there. I've been trying to get on the show, but the communication and connection just hasn't happened. So
Oh, you mean with Billy Carson and his forbidden knowledge? Yeah, he runs an empire of monetary, spiritual, something different that I'm not familiar with how it all works. And I've seen the weave, but too many of my friends that are original event people from way back in the day, before we all split due to COVID in the UFO history, ancient alien business. Uh, I don't know. Billy's grown a lot, but when I met him, he was just running he came in 2017. He was talking about Gaia, but he really wanted to get on with Gaia. But he came up to be with us in the Mars Anomaly Conference at the University of Southern Alabama, and there was Andrew Bashaga was a speaker, Dr. Alexander Sasha Lesson, Janet Lesson, myself, many people that were into the Mars anomaly. They had a whole group of about 16 people that are educated, but they try to decipher NASA, Mars satellites, and then what. Oh, I can't hear you. For some reason, I have to mute for you to speak, and I'm not sure. Something to do with this new StreamYard, I guess. But what were you saying?
Billy and a bunch of people had gotten together and they started researching all the NASA photos of Mars and the moon to see if they could discover anomalies. And so they've done actually incredible research. There's a lot of stuff that they pulled out of these, hundreds of thousands of photos that NASA has put online because, I mean, they were mandated to do so. And so that's always fascinated me. I've found, things on the moon in moon photos and Mars photos as well. And so I could be part of the research group, but I haven't had the time to dive too deep into that.
I have to unmute, so I mute you and back and forth. So right now you're muted, so you'll have to wait till I talk. I don't know what's going on, folks, but lately with all this AI, and they've been upgrading and going, and I know Apple's getting a lot more than Android's getting, and Google and Microsoft, and there's all kind of tech wars going on right now, and a lot of people can feel it. Like if you do a lot of work like I do every day on the internet and different streams, you can really see the levels and the caste system that's being set up with money and tokens and central bank versus crypto, and how all the banks are using it and all of that. But we won't go into that. But Billy does, I think. But you're really walking on eggshells when you start working with cyberspace culture and crypto. So just be aware that it's probably here to stay, but you've got to understand it, and a lot of people do, and you need to understand the stock market and how the central bank works and history. And it's really hard for us to go into the future without understanding where we came from historically. So I try to stick with what we call the Ascension Center, the Ace Folklife Historical. We have the UFO Association, UAP Associates, that are orators, and Jan, what's Jan's last name? Jan Aldrich, yeah. And he, until he was 86, and his sister died of cancer, and we had Dr. Bruce Maccabee, PhD, with us, and I've had Stanton T. Friedman, for years before, and before that we had Jesse Marcel, the doctor. But we've had very good people all the way back to Carl and her husband, and they had a UFO group. But I guess you could say the Mutual UFO Network got started after Carl Lorenzen up in Wisconsin, and then a university professor helped get all that going. So we've had a long history, including the center which Dr. J. Allen Hynek started. And it all sort of dispersed with everybody dying. Dr. Hynek died. His son's helping with regard to that. And then we still have the Chicago Center for UFO Studies, and then the University of Mexico working with that. And then we have Rice University, if you want to study there. We have a nice library there. But, what we're doing is going to start getting people that are still alive. It's a little hard to talk to these guys now that they passed, but I used to. So Hans is one of these up-and-coming research guys that spent a lot of his time doing what we all did. At some level, we became curious, and also I'm interested in Bigfoot as well because I've actually seen them, which sounds crazy. But let me see how deep Hans gets into all this stuff. Hans, do you get into all this Gigantopithecus and all of that? You know what I'm saying? And
Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, China, they all have their own version of the Bigfoot. In Nepal, you have the Yeti or the Minche. Neither of these are Tibetan words, so it's interesting where they came from. But they call them the mountain men. They're big hairy mountain men. And this is where we get the stories of the Yeti. And they live in the high altitudes in Nepal, in between Nepal and India, and Nepal and Tibet. In far eastern Kham Tibet, which is now central China, they're called the Yeren. And it's interesting that the Yeren have their own sanctuary, and they built these statues of a mother and a child hugging over the entrance of the sanctuary. And so it's a sanctuary for the Yeren. And in Bhutan, they're called Mgwe. And they're depicted as being shorter in stature, but incredibly hairy as well, like a Bigfoot. And the people of Bhutan basically say when they encounter them, they smell of rotting garlic, like the worst rotting garlic you can smell. And so this is how you know that you're encountering them, is because you come across the smell. And in far eastern Bhutan, where my father is working in Tashigang, there is the Soktang Wildlife Preserve, which the front entrance to it literally was across the road from where my dad rented his flat. And on the sign, it says, this is a sanctuary for the Mgwe, the local Bigfoot. And so the whole sanctuary has been set up as this wildlife preserve so that they're not disturbing this race of crypto-terrestrials, basically. And here where I live in the Pacific Northwest, I'm in Oregon, we have Bigfoot sightings here in northern Oregon and western Oregon, as well as southern.
wow.
I've never seen, but I've heard them out camping. I was with my girlfriend, God, I want to say 2016. We were out halfway between Portland and Tillamook. Tillamook is on the coast, so we're in the Cascade Ranges. And we're in the middle of the woods. We're nowhere near civilization, trains, roads, anything. There's like a river that kind of went through the area that we were at, and we had to drive into this area several miles to find the campsite that we were at. And we were getting ready to put the fire out in the evening, and she hears this high-pitched scream, not like a human screaming, but like more like a whistle. And then there was this massive splash in the river, as if somebody had thrown a boulder, big, huge boulder into the river to alert us that they were there. Never saw it, but it freaked me out pretty good. It freaked her out as well.
My sightings, I'm so glad to have met you and to find out all this. I wouldn't know all that you said about, I haven't done any research on this Bigfoot, Gigantopithecus, or Yeti, or skunk ape, but enough, just to help get a radio show here or there when people were coming on to speak. But you're very educated in this, and you should write a book about all that you know with that education, because people like us think we're nuts. And when I saw one recently in the last year, May 17th at the a park here near where I live in Buda Bastrop area off of I-35, but it was out in the woods. Palmetto Forest, I think it was. It's by the state. But, I mean, I saw it, but I'd seen two before when I was driving truck late at night, and they were always in a forest area, like between Kentucky, Missouri, and I'd be driving 2 or 3 a.m. leaving Beaver Dam, Kentucky, where I live, going down to Memphis, which was a normal haul or something for cookies back in that area. And I happened to see one night, a big one, like looking at I turned the corner this way so my lights caught like a mama and a baby getting berries. And I thought at first it's like baby bears, and then I looked over and here this big, like you imagine, a big tall, I guess Bigfoot, skunk ape, look over at me like he knew I'd seen him. And that was one time. And then later on, when I was coming back up, I drove 8 to 10 years on the road and drive in. I worked for the government and in and out contractors. But one was walking along way before you get to the Arkansas side. You're coming up, I guess, out of Texas into Memphis, and it was in the woods, and it happened to walk under, it was late at night, under, I guess it shouldn't have, I don't even know why, or near it, because now I don't remember, I didn't write it down, a big billboard, and I saw it. And is there something about when you don't know these things exist, but if you look and you catch their eyes, they know, it's like they have telepathy or psionics of some type. They look right back at you in your eyes, and it's a glance and a stare that you never don't forget. Anyway, I'm gonna let you talk for a minute on that. What have you heard?
On Bigfoot and Yeti in Nepal. I've seen firsthand Yeti scalp and Yeti hand, which is in Pangboche. It's on the way to the first camp. You leave Namche, you go up and over Kumlung, and then you go to Tongboche, which is a famous Buddhist monastery that burned to the ground, and they rebuilt it. And then from that, you go further up the valley toward Mount Everest to Pangboche. And Pangboche is where the famous Yeti scalp and hand and finger still exists. And there's some controversy around this because somebody tried to steal it years ago, and it may have left the country and ended up in the British Archaeological Museum, but it's definitely back in Nepal because I've seen it firsthand. But it's interesting. In 2017, the CIA released pretty much a treasure trove of stuff from South Asia, and they were very, very, very interested in researching as much as they could around UFO sightings and crashes in Nepal, as well as the Yeti. And so it's interesting that in 2017 they released this. This is kind of the picture from the actual CIA documentation. But they were very fascinated.
What's in that book? Is that your book?
That is more. So.
Oh my God! I'm talking to like the real researcher on the Bigfoot. Oh my God!
I talk about lots of stuff, but this is one of the famous. No, and I mean you can see how large this thing is compared to the ice axe it's standing next to. And people say, no, these are just leopard prints, and when the snow starts to melt, they expand, and it's like, no, they're not leopard prints, folks. This is, and they're not.
I gotta get you with Jay Widener. Can you hear me okay, or am I breaking up? You can hear me okay? Okay. Well, Jay
he's the first person that ever interviewed me.
That ever what?
Interviewed me. Like having a podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously. So he knows you know about the Dropa Stones and the Bigfoot.
Yeah, we had talked a lot about that. I would love to get back on the podcast. I met him. I guess it would have been the fall of 2022 when he interviewed me. And then I met him back to the desert in 2023. And we were sitting with from Gaia, and we had been lunch together, and Steve was like, "Oh, Hans, Jay, you should meet Hans. He's been to Nepal, and he lived in Tibet and Nepal, and this, that, and the other thing." And Jay just looks at Sid and goes, "I know Hans. I've interviewed him." It was the most classic moment. But it was really nice to meet him in person because I've followed Jay Widener's work for years. I was very fascinated with his Kubrick's Odyssey series. He and a writer the third part of that. So last fall, writer Lee actually reached out to me to get into contact with us. But he ended up in her. I enjoyed.
I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm not on mute. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I was saying I was on Ryder Lee's podcast, Raised by Giants. And so Ryder Lee has been doing a lot of video production with Jay Widener recently. And so they put out Kubrick's Clockwork Shining.
The
KFKX. It was a great documentary. So I've been on his podcast. Recently, I was on Walter Bosley's podcast. I often do Wednesdays with Crypto Alchemist, but I haven't been on there in a little bit, and he's touring the States right now. And then I was on Fade to Black last fall with Jimmy Church, which was awesome. I've been on the White Lotus podcast. I was on Awaken Magazine's podcast. I've been on your podcast now. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of other people. I can't. Dame Lillian. Can't remember her last name. I was on her podcast. I was also on Meet Julie, I think is her name. She's from Thailand, and so she interviewed me last year after I gave my lecture at Alien Event in LA last year. And so she's like, I need to get you on my podcast. So I've been on her podcast. And I enjoy doing these things. I like having an open format and just, talking about my knowledge, my research. That's, I think, the one thing that's a little bit different from what I do than other researchers. And I'm not jumping into everybody else's research in nauseum like a lot of researchers are. They just repeat everybody else's stuff. I'm actually talking about my lived experience and how it relates to my research, because that's how I approach things. So, as Indiana Jones always says, if you want to learn something about a culture, you have to go out and do it.
You're definitely an expert and written a book on it too, but just the Dropa Stones alone to extraterrestrial writing 20,000 years ago, and then up in all the studying that I did through all the esoteric books I read near Rice University Aquarian Age bookstore, and just growing up around this stuff, it was amazing. I went on a journey to Hawaii, but I never saw a Bigfoot over there, folks. But I did see extraterrestrials down at the ocean and met with people. Go ahead.
You said you saw extraterrestrials in Hawaii or UFOs. Yeah, I have. I lived on Maui for 2.5 years, and I have some interesting stories about things that I've seen in the skies. And I have 5 hours of missing time. I was at a friend's gathering. We were all sitting around the fire, playing guitar, eating deer meat, because there's a bunch of access deer that are all over the islands. The Prime Minister of India in the 1950s brought over 40 or 50 pairs to gift to the king and queen of Hawaii, and they've gone buck wild basically, and there's too many of them now, but only the locals are allowed to hunt them. And so a friend of mine actually hunts the meat and sells it, and so he had brought all these shish kebabs that we were having. And so we're all sitting around the fire telling stories, and I lean back and I'm looking up into the stars, and the next thing I know, my girlfriend is shaking me going, we need to leave now. And I'm like, well, we just got here. We literally just got here. And she's like, no, you've been staring at the sky for over 5 hours, and we've been trying to snap you out of it, and we have not been able to until just now. And I'm like, okay. Was I, abducted? I don't know. But I was coming home from Costco. I was on my bicycle, 5-gallon bottles of water, basically, on my bike. And I lived on the north shore of Maui, this little town outside of the little town of Paia. And Paia is like probably 15 miles from Haiku and another 10 miles from Kahului, where you land on Maui. But it's all North Shore. And so where I lived was up against the cane fields. And I stopped my bike as I'm looking across the cane fields at Haiku, which is about, from where I'm standing, is about 10 miles. There's a hill called Baldwin Hill, and then 3 miles past that is Haiku. And coming from behind Baldwin Hill is this white cylindrical cigar-shaped object. And the first thing I thought was, oh, it's a water tanker, because they're out there watering the cane fields. But when I saw it coming from behind Baldwin Hill, I went, there's no way that's a water truck. Baldwin Hill is 10 miles from where I'm standing. And so whatever this object is, it was huge. And I thought, well, maybe it's the top of a building. Well, I've flown over this area of Maui probably 6-7 times now, and there's no buildings there either. And so what was it? Was it military aircraft? Could be, because there's a lot of military aircraft that flies from Guam to Hawaii and back in the middle of the night, but this is during the middle of the day. I have photos and video footage of it. I ran into the house. I got my girlfriend. I'm like, come check this out. What is that? And so that was one of my experiences there. I have no idea what it is to this day that I saw. I've looked all over the military. They have to announce if they're doing drills or anything. So they have like an aviation website that you can look and see if anything was flying that day. Nothing wasn't listed on the site. And then during the evenings, I would see a lot of stuff flying through the skies as well. It's because you're out in the middle of the ocean. There's nothing around you, So yeah, I'd be interested in hearing where you were in Hawaii and what you had seen.
Oh, I was on Kaneohe Bay side. It was something going on psionic-wise while I was in the military. We dealt with people synergistically involved, psi seminars. We also dealt with the Stargate program. Some said the Army, some Navy, some CIA. Who knows? Everybody had a piece of the action or what was going on there. And anyway, I had my part in all these little groups, but I was one of few women, no men, that was invited to a house on the side of Kaneohe Bay side, on Oahu, not Maui, And so we met there, and it came a bright light underwater came up. We were up. We all didn't know why we were there. We all were told to show up there by somebody at a certain time, and I to this day couldn't tell you who they were, but we all went down. So one lady led us down to the ocean, and it wasn't Joan with the dolphins or any of those people. I don't know who she was, but she led us down to the water, and it was rather calm, and a light came up underwater, and these two beings came out that looked sort of amphibious. So you thought maybe they had a wetsuit on, and they had a big thing right here, like a knob or something, and they looked like something out of a Marvel. I can't explain it. They didn't look like humans, and they didn't look like fish either. I don't know what they were. But that's the one time that I saw something, and we had what made me think of it too was the missing time was about 5 hours. And we don't know where we went or anything. We had gathered there before sunset. It was sun, and so we guessed 7:30, but by 12:30 or 1, we dispersed again. But we just don't have any recollection. I don't know if I ever run into anybody after that, but there was only certain ones invited, and certain ones that left. So I don't know if it was the woman wasn't dressed in black ops or military to make us think it was government, and we don't know what happened. So I've reported that on a radio show once with Janet Lesson over in Hawaii. Some friends of hers had a show, and probably haven't told it since. It's a real strange having to do like with sort of a mermaid fish UFO group, and I haven't heard of any. So you let me know if you do hear of anything aquatic or
the fish or aquatic aliens are related to Sirius.
To what?
They're related to Sirius.
Oh
so
my gosh.
The Dogon tribe, they learned all their Sirius from a group of extraterrestrials they called the Namo, and they described them as being amphibious. And so this is an interesting connection to Sirius. Yeah.
Oh, I gotta have you back. I don't know. We're sparking each other, but it's out. We're over an hour now. We got a few minutes late, but Hans, I think you and I should talk. If I'd known all this, but look what all I found out. I don't know if you found out anything, maybe a click or two with the Bigfoot and the fish people, but I've also had through my entire life, since I was a little girl, I died. So I started having, my uncles took me to White Sands, and I had uncles working at Los Alamos, and some of them working at NASA. Sometimes they'd come through Houston, and then my sister and them lived in Lubbock. But the whole thing of me being a little girl and having met this family, I wrote about that in my books, but people didn't know whether to believe it or not, so I guess you could say it was based on truth. But I've had several extraterrestrial encounters since, and I feel somewhat guided, but I still would like to know some of the parts at I'm going to be 74 this year, December. So I'm looking for people that firsthand may have some research or more than I did about all of that. And of course, at my age, I do want to do more research. So we'll get with Jay Widener, because he's talking about some Bigfoot, he lives near some compound or a store or something. But he's, I don't know that he saw one. I can't remember in his show. I'd have to go back and listen to it. But if we can, we'll try to do something on it. Since
great.
Let me read your book, and the Dropa Stones is the one with the Bigfoot information in it.
Right.
Okay, well, I'll probably buy that one first. Well, Hans, would you like to maybe come back in the future, and we can get with... And I'd like to talk to you about your work on graphic designing and phenomenon. If you could look at it, phenomenon.tv.com. There's nothing on it right now but a WordPress. But I can put you as an admin on it, phenomenon.tv.com. And we'll put this on there and start. I can put Jay Widener on there, Rick Doty, maybe Jesse Marcel, Brad Olsen, different people that are sort of in our genre, and see what comes of it. And we'll just build it and see where it goes from there. Because, so many people do esoterics or metaphysics. I always said I was a metaphysician, but I was known for tarot reading and Michael Jackson coming to Hawaii and looking me up and me helping him and stuff like that. So that's what got me on the board with Hollywood, and then Plant Hollywood reading them. And when I had office in California, I was in fashion. But that was a short-lived 5 years of my life, So I just write books and do videos now, and I haven't been very good at it. I've sort of retired from all of the cyberspace culture, but I still have American Communication Online, and Hans Dietrich has Megalithic Mysteries, right?
Yeah,
Is that your...
Megalithic Mysteries, and also Mega, which is short. They both go to the short. They both
okay, and people can find you, like my sister's a Facebook fan. Do you have Facebook? You and I got in touch with each other, I think, on Telegram.
Initially, I think we were with them. when you reached out on Telegram.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find
Well-
me. Hans Dietrich on Facebook.
Okay, and so if anybody wants to book you, how?
What was that?
If they want to book you on their shows, because this went live on 3 streams to YouTube, and I never know where people are going to find us, because under those I've got thousands of different, it pipelines out. People can't get the numbers, and I never wanted them to have.
You muted yourself again.
I was saying I've got 3 on YouTube that went out to, and from there it pipelines out to different places and things over 20 years. So I've had stuff on here since 2004 and 2008. But how people keep in touch in social media and what we're going to build in the future will just depend on who has time and what they want to contribute, because people are researching different things and genres. So Hans, we'll have you back, and then we'll see what you can do with your graphic design for Phenomenon TV, and we'll just put videos on there and go from there and see what it catches. It's like throwing a net out, see what comes back, you know. All right.
Great.
Well, we'll have you back. Usually Jay and I say every 3 months or so. I've had him back, and so I know he'll be back about September, October. But I'll tell him I talked to you and you came on, and I'll ask him if we can, I'll do a 3-way on Bigfoot. I'm sure he'd be agreeable. He's a very agreeable person. But catching him, because he's working diligently on making videos now. Yeah, with another woman and stuff. So everybody has their own research and work, and mine is consciousness at the highest level, and I'm working a lot with AI levels and agents and engines and pipelines, and how all that, what I'm building for Allied Command Intergalactic Relations, ACIR, and how we're building higher levels of intelligence working with people on the planet. So that gives us a door in to see extraterrestrials. And it was my understanding that the Bigfoots were the ones that were left here behind the ships that came 20K years ago with the little ones. And apparently some part of my mind was on that. I remember as a girl searching out anything I could on Tibet and the flags, and they flew for the people wanting them to come back, the ETs and all that. So I'm always looking for that thread, and I think you're part of that, because there's no coincidences, folks. I can tell you that right now. So we'll, when we have time, we'll bring Hans back, and when he has time, because he works all week doing graphic design, if you want some really good artwork, not AI, but some really good artwork or graphic. He's done a lot for some famous companies, and I'm just plugging him because I want him to do ours, and we'll see if you like that. So, and and he did that poster back there, and that other alien event sign. My relative made that. It's $125 or more to put that on vinyl. So that's a vinyl replica, like a NFT or a non-fungible token art, right? So his poster is becoming artwork. He didn't even know it. All he did was help out our friend, and now he said, "That's me," in the middle of that's me. He didn't know he was in my office. This is my office, folks. I have a bedroom and family in there. So, well, he's going to be more well-known than he is right now, folks. So you may want to get him in his young years before he catches up to me. And I don't want to travel. I'm going to go on a few cruises, and I may do a few intuitive reads.
It's in September to Alien. So,
yeah, you'll be there September 12th through the 14th. He's going to be speaking on, I guess, these 3 books and anything else he's done since, right?
Yep.
So you'll have plenty to talk about. And
Walter Bosley in November for the me right now. Lost Horizons conference in Big Bear.
Where is it located?
In Big Bear, so it's just outside.
You guys talk like we know what's going on, and I drove a truck, and I've been in every state of the United States.
Yeah, Big Bear just outside LA.
Oh, Big Bear's outside of LA. I don't remember driving an 18-wheeler through Big Bear, but
yeah.
Okay. Well, so you're going to be going to that conference when?
It's in November. It's sitting in front of me.
So September you'll be with Alien Event in Las Vegas, and that's through 5D or alienevent.com. And what's the name of that hotel we met at, Hans? Do you remember?
It's called the Alexis Resort.
Alexis Park Resort.
Correct.
Right, and they've got a nice conference room on the back right off of the pool. Big, huge, and Syed David Farman books about 5 rooms or more. He has speakers going continually, and you can walk around.
November 6th, I'll be with Walter Bosley, Graham, Julia Comment, Joe Farrell, and others. We'll be in Big Bear.
Now, who is Walter Bosley? His name doesn't ring a bell in my world.
So, wow, how do I describe Walter? Walter was, I don't really know how to describe him. He used to work for the government, basically. He worked for the FBI, and he also worked for another intelligence agency and was stationed in Afghanistan. And he started doing esoteric research into the airship mysteries of the 20s to the Civil War era. And these were airships that were not dirigibles, but they were powered by some sort of serum. There's historical events around them. And so he started getting into the airship mysteries, and he's gotten into a lot of stuff that is around that. And so he's been on Dark Journalist a bit, if you ever watched Dark Journalist's podcast on Fridays, as has Dr. Joseph Farrell. And Joseph Farrell has talked a lot about the Diglaka, or the Bell Project.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to be more of a phenomenon, but the Nepal stuff I'm very interested in.
You muted yourself again.
I said I'm very interested in Nepal, all that you talked about, the Dropa Stones, the little beings that came before. I wanted to get in to ask you how the Anunnaki story fits with that, but all the deluge stories and all of that, Iraq, Iran, and Dr. Alexander Sasha Lesson covers all of that on the Anunnaki or the An, and this, stories back then too. And all of them sound real familiar. It's like every group of beings from out in space tell the same story. So it's something we need to look into, definitely. All right, folks, not that we haven't been for the last, my 35, 40 years. So keep doing your research. Look for us for authors, consultants, orators, and those that want to speak at events. And we'll tell you, we'll get back involved as to what's what. All right, well, we're going to end and have you back, Hans, later on, and I'll send this to you through WeTransfer, okay?
I appreciate being on.
Thank you very much. Now I've just got to figure out how to get us off of here. So I'll just hit end stream.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers.
Peace. Namaste. Okay.